Hello everyone and welcome back for another episode of Indie Impressions. My name is Nick and today we're going to be investigating Papo Yo. This is a game that was released on the PlayStation Network back in August of 2012 and is just now seeing release on Steam. It's a puzzle/adventure platformer with some very cool art design and a very serious sort of emotional, personal story about a young boy and his relationship with his alcoholic father. And it takes that to a very interesting metaphorical place, and it's a very unique game that I haven't really seen attempted, well, anything even similar, really, in the long time I've been playing games. So it's very much worth a look, and I do have some opinions on it. I've actually taken this a little bit differently. This isn't one of our usual first impressions games, the way I usually do it. I actually played about half of the game. I got through the end of the second act, so that's about 2 hours in out of a total of somewhere around 4. So I thought the way the presentation of this game was, it really sort of needed to be played quite a bit to really have a good handle or grasp on exactly what this game was about. So let's start up a new game from the beginning. I want to introduce as few spoilers as possible while we investigate Papo Yo. To my mother, brothers and sisters with whom I survived the monster in my father. So that's a very important quote and really sets the tone for what it is that we're about to get into. This is a heavy game, honestly. Like I said, it's a very personal story. And for people who can relate to this sort of a thing, it's, I imagine, really different. I don't think there's really been a lot of games that have investigated this sort of a heavy topic. And it's very tastefully handled. From what I've seen of it, it's really well done. There are some exceptions. I have some mixed opinions about the game. It's not 100% positive. But largely, there are definitely some good reasons to want to play Papo Yo. So he's hiding in the closet from his father, who's rumbling by. The father in the game is referred to as Monster. And we've found this portal to escape to, and essentially what this is just a psychological state, well, metaphorical psychological state, where the boy has now found a world that he can inhabit that actually gives him some control over his situation. So this is an Unreal Engine game. It's quite pretty, and there's some really great artistic decisions that were made in this game, but also some shortcomings. And we're going to talk about mostly the good stuff at first, and then I'll get into some of the middling to average sort of opinions that I have about the game. So the first thing I want to do is just sort of look around and show you, look at the beautiful landscape of favelas here that we've got. We've got a dynamic, ambient occlusion. All the usual stuff you'll expect from an Unreal Engine game are present. Those are all there. So let's head down. Oh, I also want to show you, look how pretty it is when you look through the leaves. Look at that. Lovely touches. So the first thing is, we find this little girl here who happens to have this magical ability to draw things into the walls. And largely that's where the majority of gameplay comes from. There's a lot of manipulation of different magical elements in this to manipulate the world in ways that are really quite fantastic. And I think that's where the biggest strength of this game comes from, is just the ability to play with the world, and there are some really kind of cool puzzles. And the fact that this is such a generally naturalistic-looking landscape really makes the impact amazing when you can actually play with it in such ways. And the other cool thing is this isn't like a digital on or off switch. You can actually kind of push this in or out and see the animation take place in real time. So, I mean, I know that probably doesn't matter to a ton of people, but I think it's very cool. Actually play around with the soccer ball here. I feel like the sense of scale is a little off, though. I don't know if that's just me, but I don't really understand. Like, he seems very small, and I understand he's just a child, but that soccer ball seems very large. Regardless, doesn't matter. Let's head up the stairs. And there is a very cool tactile quality to the sound effects, like when you're walking around on these magical items, there's those little particles shooting out. The sound design, from everything I've seen, has been top-notch. I don't think I have any criticisms or complaints about the sound design. In fact, I think is one of the better elements that this game has going for it. So we're going to wander around a bit, do a little bit of exploration. The thing is, one of my minor complaints about this game is a lot of the exploration is kind of with air quotes around it, or just quotes in general. The exploration is somewhat linear, I hate to say, and being such a wonderful, beautiful, wondrous world, whimsical world, I really wanted to take part in it and really interact with it in a lot of meaningful ways, but for the most part, they kind of push you down a path, which I find a little bit regrettable. It does open up a little bit later on, but at the beginning at least, you kind of just have to follow, the path that they give you. So this cardboard box here, we can pick up with X, and I am using a 360 controller, as I often do. I'm a hint box, and I'm here to help, it says. There are also tutorial boxes that will teach you important things to succeed. Remember, look for a hint or tutorial box if you ever find yourself stuck. I really didn't find myself stuck at any point. The puzzles were actually fairly easy. And I would actually go so far as to say that if it weren't for the heavy emotional subject matter of this game, this would probably be best suited to people like around ages, 8 to 12, I think would probably be able to play this just fine, but I think the story kind of goes at odds with that a little bit. So let's push this gear in. And it's not to say that that means that this game is like just designed for little kids or anything. It's quite far from it. The art aesthetic and everything is very adult, and the presentation is beautifully done. I just think that in terms of gameplay, difficulty, and accessibility, I mean, this is not going to challenge you most likely in any real meaningful ways. And as we get later on into it, I think the biggest challenge really comes from the level of tedium that starts to set in as the game conventions become somewhat transparent. And really all we've got to go forward on is just pushing switches to get to more switches to get to more switches. So I guess I'll mention some of the other things that I was a little put off by. Later we're going to be introduced to Monster, who is going to end up following us around quite a bit. And the game sort of comes up with these artificial progress gates in a way to sort of restrict our movement as we progress through the game. And it's not to say that they're arbitrary, but if you don't understand the framing of the game, it's going to seem like it. In essence, one of the things that I found sort of strange, and now that I've seen the trailer and such and done a little bit of research on the game, it's not so strange, but barring that, like there was an instance where you found some frogs, and so it turns out the monster really loves frogs, and I didn't understand when we were getting into that part of the game that frogs are basically just a metaphor for alcohol. So we were actually actively trying to hide frogs from the monster who wanted them real bad. And we had to like move them around through pipes and then like turn pipes around and hit a whole bunch of switches to move pipes. And it was just sort of weird. And it's not to say that it can't be weird, because honestly the presentation of this whole game in general is not typical. And that's totally fine. I just thought that that was sort of something that perhaps could have used a little bit more explanation in the game, maybe a little bit more concreteness would have been welcomed. But, now that I look back on it, knowing what I know about the game, and you guys won't have this problem, it does make sense. I would also have liked to see a few collectibles or, like, off-the-beaten-path type things, and I keep seeing these dolls all around the environment, and I kept thinking that these were something I could interact with, and unless you can come back later, which I'm not sure that you can, it doesn't appear to be that that's the case, but they are generally placed in these sort of off-kilter locations that you might not notice. So, I mean, it would have been kind of cool if they were just little collectibles, even if it was a totally contrived reason just to get you to look around the world a little bit more in instances where there are a few options to look around. There was actually a part of the game where I actually ended up wandering for quite a while in a way that wasn't really intended, and basically I wandered really far and found it was just a total dead end. So I'm not sure why that place even existed, because for the most part it's pretty gated and there's a lot of invisible walls and such. But granted, I think the real basic reasons behind gameplay here that you would really be attracted to the game have to do with the aesthetic, the art design, the manipulation of the world, puzzles, and the story, I think, are the strongest elements that are going, and of course the sound design is quite well done as well. So let's grab this little white rope here and pull on it, and check this out. We're actually going to pull the wall out. So as I said before, this is a manifestation of this little boy's psychological state, where he feels so out of control and powerless in his normal life. He's created a situation in his mind where he can actually manipulate buildings and, tear holes in time-space in essence. I mean, that's not something he really does, but he does do some magical things. Well, there is actually, like, some portal... I shouldn't say portal, that's not the right word, but like a door opening in a wall where that doesn't really make sense. So I guess, you know, manifestations of ripping holes in time-space are not that far off. There have been some occasional frame drops. I mean, in essence, the game has actually been quite smooth, but just when we walk into a new area, I guess it tends to load all of it at once, and that's with or without Fraps running. I've had that issue, but I did actually hear that it's a pretty big improvement based on what they've talked about in the PSN release. I guess there were some technical issues with it then. I haven't had really any technical issues in my version of the game on the PC. So your typical beautiful water deformation comes standard with all copies of Unreal Engine development kit. I would like to be able to like interact with some of these doors and such. I mean, look at the scale on this. It seems like he's really small. I mean, he's not even high enough to reach the doorknob. I mean, I guess I don't really have a good frame of reference as to how old this boy's supposed to be, but he just seems extra small to me. There are some really beautiful art moments, too. I mean, there's graffiti scattered throughout the city here, the town, I'm not sure what you want to call it, and some of it is actually quite breathtaking. See, this is like one of those moments right here. Feels like there's a good opportunity. They could have put a secret there or something. Maybe there wasn't enough time in development for that sort of thing. So here's one of the first very cool puzzles that we're presented with. And of course we're wondering, like, what's the deal with this little girl that keeps running away? But, you know, we'll figure her out later. So we have to cross this river, and we don't really have a lot of ways to do that other than to interact with these cardboard cutout buildings. So you'll notice we can pick these up, and they actually move right along with our character, which is a very cool thing to actually see done in a game like that. And you can mess with them sort of dynamically, so if I drop this here, granted, I mean, they kind of give you the spots you're supposed to put them, but you don't actually really have to stick with that too much. Because I was actually playing with it, I actually dropped one on top of another, and you can create a very tall skyscraper's worth of these buildings. I mean, granted, this isn't going to really help you out in any serious way. Wow. Okay, well, kind of glitched it a little bit there. But there was actually a pretty cool opportunity, and I think that's the thing that gets me about this game, is I see a lot of really cool potential in this game that I feel like wasn't entirely realized. But this would have been a really good opportunity to set up a situation where the player can actually dynamically create like an additional optional puzzle out of this if they so chose to. So obviously you would get that the heart of this puzzle is to cross this river, right? I mean, I don't think that's too controversial to say. Most people would get that pretty quickly. But if we have all of this space to work with, and it actually outlines, you know, from this line around, this is how much space we have to stack these buildings. So why not give the player an opportunity to stack them in a sort of unorthodox method to reach a place that maybe doesn't actually progress the story, but could at least lead us to somewhere interesting. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I would like to see more of, and I think from the beginning, the most engaging parts of the game really had to do with these puzzles and manipulating the world, and once that started to give way towards some more conventional platforming tropes, I think the game started to rely more heavily on its story, but the story kind of, it wasn't as present as I would have hoped. Because it's a good story, it just needs to be a little bit more in the forefront at times, and I grant that they don't want to beat you over the head with it, and that's really a good idea, considering if some people are playing this less for the story and more for the platforming, I guess you don't really want to alienate those people either. But personally, I think the story is well done, so I feel like they should probably emphasize that a little bit more and play to the strengths of it. So we'll wind up that little peg there and proceed up. I really like the art design as far as the little like chalk drawings and 3D interactive points. It reminds me quite a bit of Shadow Man. And I'm not sure if there's like some of the same magical elements, maybe some of the same lore to do with that. If that's the case, that actually makes a lot of sense. But they definitely hit that note well. So looking around this environment, it looks like there's a ton of places we can go and a lot of different things we can do. Unfortunately, though, it's not entirely the case. This is actually a fairly restrictive environment. There's only a few things we can actually interact with, and that's one of the main complaints I have about the game, is generally there's not a lot to do, even though it looks like that's not the case. So really, all we need to do here is just interact with everything we can see. And there is actually a hint box over here, but I don't really think we need it. So let's go start messing around with stuff and see what happens. Granted, I already know how to solve this, but it's not so much a puzzle as it is just a series of switches. But still, you know, the presentation's very cute, and the fact that there's like little physics-enabled things moving around is a nice touch as well. We'll wind a couple of these guys up. The game has a lot of heart, for sure. There's no question about that. I think it has so much potential that there are some just minor things that I would have really liked to see changed to really emphasize that this is sort of a living, breathing, vivid world that we can adventure in instead of this is a singular path in a sort of a corridor-like environment. And it's only because I care so much, like, I really like the presentation in this genuinely, that I want to see this maximized, you know, the point pushed as far as it can go. Alright, so we've created some steps here. We can now go up. I will also mention there are a lot of invisible walls, unfortunately, and I don't know if that's to stop people glitching through parts that they're not supposed to be in, or if it's just nature of this engine. It might be. But I find invisible walls very frustrating, especially when it's a game that's so pretty. You know, I just want to see where I can go and kind of go off the rails a little bit if possible, but the game is very strongly against me doing that. It reminds me a little bit of Alice Madness Returns. There were some moments in that game where madness really did return. I just wanted to do a little bit of platforming, do something a little bit strange, and the game was like, nope, you can't go anywhere but exactly where we tell you to go. And that's just a big buzzkill. It really takes the immersion out for me. Alright, so now we've coordinated this path. Everything's fine. Let's set this timer back so that gate's going to open, and then we can easily proceed through and past that gate. And there we go. Alright, so then the girl has now transported up to that railing, and we're going to go chasing after her yet again. You know, it's interesting, playing this the first time, I took my time quite a bit. I stopped in every environment and explored it to its absolute fullest, as much as it let me, and I got a pretty different impression of just the amount of time it takes you to reach this point in the game already. I think this took me like at least like a half an hour, because I was going so slowly. But now that I'm sort of playing through it, knowing what I'm doing, I imagine this is going to drastically cut the playtime of the game, so I guess if there was to be any replay value, and I'm not sure if there's a lot, honestly, in this game, that's going to seriously impact that. So we've revealed some gears. Let's touch the not moving one, and that will open up some stairs. I mean, this isn't really that much of a puzzle, but it's still really cool to manipulate this building around like this. And then we'll just push this back together, and then we've created a solid staircase. I mean, honestly, if they really would have just taken this concept and not gone anywhere else with it, just made it all about exploring this world, just solidly with these puzzles in mind, and have them be more puzzles than just progression elements, I think this would have been seriously one of my favorite games of all time. I mean, the aesthetic is just beautiful, and when you put the music on top of it, and then the heart-filled story, like, it all really does try to come together very well. I think the gameplay rather, is just the one thing that's going to sort of hamstring that for a lot of people. Alright, so that is going to put this guy here. Where am I trying to go again? I forgot already. Alright, there's a ladder over there. And I'm pretty sure that is not the correct place I needed to go. Let's see where else I can go. Alright, there's actually a switch over there. I mean, this is about as deep as the puzzles get from my experience in the game. It's like, well, you couldn't go there, I guess you can go there. I mean, the platforming feels reasonably solid. It's not amazing, but it's not really necessary to jump all that precisely most of the time either, so I think it gets the job done. Let's pick up this building again, move it back over here. I'm not going to play super far into it because I don't want to spoil any plot elements for you guys that do want to go grab this one. This is, like I said, a very plot-centric game, and the progression, as things move forward, I think it's really going to matter a lot if you care to get involved in the story, so it would be terrible to want to spoil that for you. So let's run around this little building here. I mean, really, the level design is very cool. And really, my only complaints are coming from that I wish there was more of it to experience. And of course, as I always do, I have to check around the back. And yeah, there's another doll back here. Again, wish I could, like, get credit for collecting them or finding them or something, but whatever. So if I try to walk up to her, she set a trap! Alright, I think that leads to a little moment of exposition here. Yeah. So the very first thing I did, as soon as I got into this, of course, is I tried to break the game by going in the wrong direction. It obviously is steering you in the direction of going right there, but I wanted to go left. It doesn't let you do it. But still, very nice to see this, like, freeze frame moment with the raindrops still stuck in the air. And this is a recurring flashback in this child's mind, and it plays a serious amount of significance. And I'm pretty sure this is going to lead someplace very, very dark. But again, I'm not going to spoil anything serious for you. I don't know that 100% where it goes. I mean, I have an idea, but, you know, so do you, I guess, at this point. So that was me in the car with my monster father driving. So there's again a sense of a pretty heavy metaphor here, where we thought we were about to fall, but in the last moment, this little guy came and grabbed us. And basically what this guy is our favorite childhood toy, this little robot. And he's actually going to play, the Daxter to our Jack. Although maybe not at first. And pardon the frame rate again. That will smooth out in just a moment. Alright, so up we go. Have a quick look around. Another beautiful shot with this graffiti. The art style is so nice. Quico, we need to get to the other side, and I can help. Alright, so we actually do get an ability at this point, which is not something that I was expecting to end up having. I figured this was going to be a pretty simple, you know, run and jump type of affair. I thought if anything maybe we'd get some like Uncharted style grappling on ledges or something, but that doesn't seem to happen from my experience. So this is Lula, your awesome robot. And they don't really set up very well that Lula is your childhood toy. I mean, they show you holding it in the car, but there's not really a lot of other opportunities for you to know that. And maybe it was in the first cutscene, I'm not sure. Kind of forgot already. So hold down the A button to hover in the air, and that is all we need to know about Lula. So from that point, we can actually press Y to Lula. Yeah, that's a Heavy Rain reference. And, hey, I got Lula power. Why did I unlock that achievement again? I already got this before. That's weird. Did it not unlock the first time? Anyway. Maybe it's not saving them because it's in a pre-release version? I'm not sure what's up with that. So anyway, we're going to do a little bit of basic platforming. Nothing too complicated or difficult. Very thankful that we've got Lula to help us through these. So if you point Lula towards the switch, he or she can open it. I got it. Alright, back on my back, buddy. Lula! Alright, Lula goes to the switch. Everything is good from there. So now we have an ability to interact with environmental objects at a distance, which is going to come in handy on quite a few occasions. Alright, so what's going on over here? We've got another hint box. Let's have a look. This is a Lula switch. Actually, I don't even think I read this one the first time. Move the camera and aim directly at the switch. Press the Y button and send Lula to activate. Okay, well, it's all fairly self-explanatory. I guess in the game's defense, I rarely felt like I didn't understand the gameplay conventions that were being presented. There were a few times later on where it's like, the monster really likes coconuts, and I didn't really get that that was going to be such a central element to gameplay. So I kind of didn't grasp that that was a thing, but I got the point after just a minute or two. Alright, so what do I want to do now? I've hit the switch. I've gotten up here. Where's the next place I need to head? I need to get over to that corner. There's a little point over there on the side that obviously is going to need to come out. Oh, what's this? This opened up underneath us. Oh, there's nothing in there. Very pretty texture effect, though. It's like sparkling granite or something. I'm not really sure what that texture's supposed to represent. So there's a ladder. One thing that's a little, really stupid little nitpick, but I kind of hate when this happens, is if you try to glide, or in this case it's sort of like our double jump, and try to grab the ladder, it doesn't let you grab it until you fall back down to the ground. I always prefer it the other way around, if you could just grab the ladder while flying. Silly thing, it really doesn't matter. But nonetheless, thought I'd mention it. Alright, so we just had to switch that platform back. And here we go, saved another checkpoint, and it looks like we are presented with another angle on the same place that we were previously. So let's hit this key, turn that around, and what's going to change now? Oh, look at this. The house is going to turn into a crazy spider, and it's going to guide us all the way across to that little pipey land over there on the far side, where we can then hit that switch up on top. See, what I was really hoping is when we got to a moment like this, it made me wonder, hey, what if this is sort of like a Metroidvania-style game where it's, you know, to some extent open world, maybe slightly linear, at least at the beginning, but as we progress we'll get some new powers, and then we'll start to backtrack and things will open up from there. That's really where I was hoping we'd go with it. It doesn't appear that that's the case, however. We actually end up progressing to different areas. I think I'll probably play just in time to get us to where the first appearance of Monster is, and we'll take it from there. I should probably play up until the part where he eats his first frog, but I don't think that's really a good idea. I don't want to spoil it again. The plot's pretty sparse, and there's not a ton of it, at least at the beginning, so again, it's pretty important that you'd want to play it yourself. So, what do I need to do now? I need to hit that switch from this point. I actually ended up doing that by going back outside before, which was kind of silly, since there's a slight delay between triggering that and actually being able to have it do anything, like to have the animation start. I was actually able to... Whoa! Oh, well, I can't go there anyway, that's fine. I was actually able to hit it on the outside, then go back in the pipe, and then ride it back in, or back up. So, yeah, that's another way you can do it, apparently. We'll notice also, as the progression of the game goes along, the character does actually cosmetically degrade, I suppose, as his mental state sort of comes apart. You'll notice right now he doesn't have his left shoe on. He did, I believe, have that starting the game. Made me wonder also, like, why he doesn't take his shoe off and take his sock and at least wear his sock on his one foot and his shoe on the other foot, but whatever, he doesn't have time for that kind of business. Alright, so we've now drained some water out. That should allow us to progress. What's down here? Is it a box? Oh, nothing. There were some moments when I would have liked to see, like, some physics interactions. Maybe that box could have been kicked around. Maybe the soccer balls at the beginning might have reacted to you bumping into them. I mean, you can pick them up, which is nice, but just, like, being able to mess around with it and smack it into stuff would have created some interesting dynamics if the developers would have wanted to use that to their advantage. Maybe you could kick a soccer ball along with you for a certain point in the game, and eventually something could change based on if you had it or not. I don't know. Just spitballing ideas, but I just see so much potential in this game, and here's another instance of really beautiful graffiti art. The artists of this game definitely need to be commended. I don't know why I just activated that. I was supposed to be in the pipe before I did that, so I guess we get to watch the pipe. Switch over again. No big deal. Alright, so we can jump in there. You go, oh, how can I get up there? Well, I can't climb. I guess we will turn around and hit the switch again. Again, nothing particularly complex or difficult to grasp. And magically, we now have bars in front of us. I'm not sure why that happened. I guess to keep us from falling out. Although we could have still just switched the pipe back around if we did fall out, so really shouldn't have been a very big deal. Alright, saving checkpoint. And I believe this is towards the end of the first area. And this would be our introduction to Monster. We'll do one more little puzzle here. And then we'll call it a day. So, he's going to head in this direction. We can't actually see him, but we can see his shadow. So on we go, slowly, slowly walking. Let's open up this gear element. Kind of weird that that just phases through the wall like that. I would have hoped it would have had some sort of like a little complex animation of where that slid into. I should also notice there's no like death or it really can't even hurt yourself. If you fall off someplace you're not supposed to fall off, like you can right here, all that happens is Quico just gets wet, and then he's immediately teleported back to where he should have been anyway. I don't think I noticed that I could walk over this way. I went the other way first. There's a staircase leading down. So it almost looks like an optional area. I guess you're just supposed to discover he went in that trap door, and there's no way for us to open it, so we're gonna have to find another way around. I guess I just bypassed that completely. Ah, well. I should be able to just jump down here, but that looks like a dead end, actually. So this is actually the part of this area where I mentioned earlier that I sort of took a weird side path and ended up going way out of my way that didn't actually seem to go anywhere. Might as well show you what that was. So there's a little puzzle here. I mean, it's not very much of a puzzle, but I need to get that cube off of there to stack it with these 3 blocks. I mean, we've got 2 already sitting right here. Just need to line them up on the squares, and that should open a path through that door. So we're gonna head over here. So I was thinking, oh, look at this, I found a secret, or maybe I was supposed to go down here later. You know, there's a ladder, and I can jetpack my way around. And it seems like I can still keep going. And look at this, there's a little nook back here and everything. And it leads us all the way to another part. And all that we get for our trouble is just this doll back here, which doesn't do anything, so I don't know.
Lula!
I mean, is it a secret just that I'm finding these at all? Am I expecting too much, like the fact that I've been sort of trained now to expect that when I find secrets I will get some sort of a reward for it? Maybe that's the case. And they're just sort of taking an old school approach, like, hey, you found the secret, we acknowledge that you found it, and that's good enough. Could very well be what is going on here. So, let's solve one more puzzle. Oh, can I actually climb down ladders? I'm not sure if I've ever done that. There's no falling damage, of course, so I can fall as far as I can as long as it doesn't put me out of bounds, so to speak. There's actually an instance right here, and this is another little minor complaint. Like, if you jump down, where is it? There's a... I guess it was this pipe over here. Like, you can get down to that pipe from that pipe easily, and it actually counts as being, like, in the water over there, even though you're standing on something. So, I don't know, it's silly little things like that, little artificial boundaries that make me kind of nuts sometimes. I feel like this is such a cool open world to look around in. Why put all these constraints on it? Let us have some fun with it, right? I always prefer the, like, toy box approach to game design when possible. Let the player break the game if they're going to break it, as long as it's not anything too detrimental. Or it doesn't, like, compromise the integrity of the structure of your game or anything. Although sometimes when it does that, that's even better. I mean, sequence breaking in Super Metroid is probably one of my favorite things about the game, so... You know, do it right, and make sure it's only for certain people to find. You know, people who care enough to bother. And make sure it doesn't cause any, like, glitching or, you know, breaks the game or anything. And I think as long as you can manage that, that's kind of the best way to approach it. But I think a lot of developers purposely try to limit these things because they don't want to have to account for every possible permutation of level design or, you know, alternate path that you could discover. And in some cases, it comes across seeming quite heavy-handed, where they need to block all kinds of things. The reason that this even came up, and the first time I even noticed it, was I figured, hey, look at this. So this block was... We're just going to pretend the white block is still up on this platform here. We're going to pretend that we can actually reach it, because in normal circumstances, I would try to sequence break in this. And I thought, maybe this jump is just far enough that I could jetpack around, and if I could grab the ledge, I definitely could. But they seem to have put an invisible wall right in front of that to keep us from doing that. You know, not the end of the world, but it just gets on my nerves sometimes. Alright, so she's come and taken this block away from us, and she's going to run in circles to keep us from getting it back, if possible. Since I already know what I'm supposed to do, really, all I need to do is grab one of these blocks. Oh, yeah, I know. It's going to go back in the ground. No big deal. Put it here. And this block, conveniently enough... Oh, okay, I jumped poorly there and kind of got stuck in the air. Alright, break out of the animation. Ah, it's too late, I gotta wait through another cycle again. But these blocks seem to have, like, a little bit of water floating on top of them, which is actually a really cool effect. And for some reason, that block knows it's supposed to bring me up to here, so thank you for that. So she's standing in just the right place. I know pulling on this lever is going to temporarily bring these bars down. She's going to get all frustrated. Man, I can't get out of here with this giant sugar cube. I guess I'll teleport away by using one of my magical gates. You'd think she'd realize I lifted the bars back up, but oh well. And then we'll just drop this off on the third spot. And that will open up the path forward. Again, nothing too complex. We'll wait for this to go back up so we can get maximum height possible. And through we go. So I think we might have... Oh no, I thought this was another recap moment. So you see we've been playing for a little bit now. There hasn't been a ton of actual explanation of what's going on story-wise. That does speed up a little bit as we get further in. But in a way, looking back on it, they are sort of explaining the story, just they're doing it in a way that doesn't leave the player privy to any new information, really. You're doing it all blindly. But once you have the information about what is actually happening in a bigger scope, then looking back on this, it'll start to make a little bit more sense. Not always sure if I like that sort of an approach. I mean, there are worse ways to go, I guess. But it can come across a little fragmented, and for people that have, you know, not a ton of patience to let the game explain what it's going to explain, I can see that being a little bit prohibitive. Got a pretty cool tower here. So he's just kind of a lazy guy, just laying there sleeping. The game explains that we can crawl onto his stomach, and as long as we're looking in the direction we want to go in, we should be able to jump extra high there. Pretty, like, epic-looking scene with the god rays coming around him like that. Alright, so let's face him towards this window here and bounce extra high, and out we go. Look at that. I don't even know exactly what that's a picture of, but it's very cool looking. It's like the puppet master controlling the puppet, controlling the puppet, controlling the puppet. Alright, so let's grab this rope, and this is actually pretty important. We're going to open up this door in the wall, and I wish there was more of this. This is my favorite part of the game, is just whenever I get to mess around with the environment in a really cool magical way like that. I find that very exciting, and the presentation of it is just really well done. So we need to, at this point, realize that we've got these sort of like pressure plates, and they're pretty well labeled. We need to guide Monster onto that. And so Monster's favorite thing, aside from poison frogs, he also quite likes coconuts. Although I probably shouldn't have just thrown that one at him. Let's see if I can grab it again. Yeah, alright, follow me. He's docile in general, as long as he doesn't have any poison frogs. He'll mess around with you, and he's not super dangerous. Alright, so we'll guide him onto that platform. He's going to grab that coconut away from me, and that will cause him to charge forward rather recklessly and kind of almost over me in pursuit of more coconuts. So this is where the game starts to change up the gameplay a little bit from being a solitary experience where we're essentially just doing a lot of platforming on our own, trying to find the way forward, to now we have to deal with Monster. He's going to be around whether we like it or not, and we're going to have to make sure he gets his coconuts and he gets his path open for him. The thing is, though, I mean, that in itself sort of makes this play a little bit like an escort quest a lot of the time, which I'm not always a huge fan of. And then once you combine that with the fact that the gameplay starts to become rather rote after a pretty short period of time, it's always about, like, okay, guide him onto the plate, go hit all the switches, rotate something around, open up a new platform, find another switch. It just ends up being a bit repetitive, unfortunately. Not to say that it might not get more interesting again towards the very end, but in the couple of hours I spent with it, that seemed to be where we were going, and it seemed like we were gearing up to just broaden the scope of more and more switches leading to other switches. You'll also notice... Oop, I didn't mean to throw him. You'll also notice the generally cheerful, colorful presentation has now given way a little bit to lots of, like, blues and greens with a couple hits of bright color and a lot of rain. And that's cool. I mean, I don't have any issues with the presentation changing, but I feel a little bit sad that it's gotten to be more dismal like that, because I just really enjoyed the colorful nature of it before. But granted, it's to support the story, which is totally fine. Alright, I think I've given him... Have I given him all the coconuts? Oh no, there's 3 more up there, I think. This is gonna break or bend over. There we go. Alright, so he's gonna grab all of those. When he's done, we're going to realize that the jumping on the belly thing was not a single-use move. It's apparently going to come into play quite a bit. So he's going to get tired when he finishes eating all his coconuts and come lay against this wall where these cardboard boxes are. And keeping in mind, again, the narrative here that we're weaving is entirely metaphorical. This is an alcoholic father who is solely concentrated on his own situation. The fact that Quico is here, it's not even an element for him. So it's a really kind of an ingenious way to present the relationship between these two characters. And it's an amazing way to put this childlike vision through what could be a really dark and depressing situation. And I think it really does sort of take you to the mind of a child in a way, the way that it was put together. So in that way, I must say the game is very skillfully made. Again, I just think the story really does take precedence over the gameplay after a point. And I know it seems hard to imagine at this point, where things have just been rather fresh and everything seems like it's just starting to be unfolding in front of us. Eventually that will give way to some repetition, unfortunately. Alright, so what do I do at this point? I've got... Okay, this is where I can climb up this coconut tree and shake them loose, and we're gonna just sort of progress with the same idea in mind, where we need to grab coconuts whenever we can, lead him to a pressure plate. Not even sure if he's... Oh, there he is. He doesn't always wake up right away. So lead him onto here. There we go. That's gonna shake this chunk of land and drop it down. Oh. No big deal. Alright, so there's an invisible ladder here we can climb. Oh, there she is. Sure. Now, I'm actually not sure what her relationship to us is so far in the game. Maybe a sister? Friend? I'm not sure, but regardless, I'm very curious to know more about her later on. She's just been a bit of an enigma at the beginning, I should say. I meant to actually just drop that right there. There we go. So once he's in this box, let's pull this lever. I mean, you can tell none of this stuff requires a ton of thought about how to solve, and even having, like, the very first time when I played through this, when I had no experience, I didn't really feel like I really had to put a lot of thought into it then either. So I wonder a lot about what this could have been had the presentation matched the puzzles in terms of, you know, the progression of the game. Maybe they don't want to lock people out of possibly seeing more of the story, so they want to keep things fairly accessible. And if that's the case, I guess I kind of understand. But since this is a reasonably adult, mature-themed game, I don't know, I think I expected a little bit more in terms of difficulty out of the puzzles. So I think this is probably a pretty good point to wrap us up. I'm sure you can guess what I'm supposed to do here. But that's going to open another door to proceed onward, and then we'll start getting into, you know, frogs and pipes and stuff like that. But I think this has been a decent look at what you can expect from Papo and Yo. It's going to be up on Steam right now. Oh, wow, he's floating pretty high in the air, isn't he? That's kind of strange. Weird engine stuff. Anyway, it's kind of a weird thing to go out on, right? Prefer that you touch the ground, dude. So, this is available on Steam right now. As is always the case when new games release on Steam, it's actually available for a slight discount for the first, what is it, week or so. And then its final price will go to $14.99. As far as the value proposition here, the game's about 4 hours long. It's generally the average I seem to hear. I'm not sure if that makes a ton of sense, but in terms of presentation and just the uniqueness of this game, I think it's probably worth getting. It's just all about what you get out of the later levels of this in terms of gameplay. That's really the only thing that keeps me a little bit apprehensive about recommending this, you know, entirely with no reservation. If the game was $10, I think I would have a much easier time saying absolutely go for it. This is, you know, the quality in the production is way over the, you know, the price they put on it. 15 is I think it deserves to be a 15, but I think it also just needs a little bit more. And I know that's sort of a silly criticism to make because the game's out. I can't really, you know, ask that kind of a thing. But at the same time, I want to see them realize this to its fullest potential, and it just feels like it fell a little bit short. That's my opinion anyway, and that's really all I have to offer, unfortunately. But I am curious to know what your opinions of this one are as well. This is a very interesting game for sure, and I know there's a lot of different ways we can talk about it criticism-wise. So please do let me know your opinions about any aspect of this game in the comments. Anything you have to say about it, I'm very curious to hear. And I definitely think, regardless of what my opinions are, positive or negative, it's a very bold step in terms of gameplay and design, I should say, not so much gameplay. The gameplay is a little bit derivative at times, but the design and the storytelling element is absolutely bold and unique and very different, and definitely deserves a lot of recommendations and recognition for that element alone. So thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, remember to head on over to my website, which is indie-impressions.com. Check out all the older videos in the series. They're all lined up over there if you want to check out all the ones that are on Steam. They're categorized. You can check them out by tags as far as genres. If you have a specific favorite genre, you can sort them all by that. In general, there's a ton of stuff there on the site for you to check out, so feel free to go browse, see what you can find, and stop by the forums as well if you have a spare minute. You know, engage in some conversation about indie games. There we go. Locked him up in a prison. Other than the website, though, facebook.com/indieimpressions if you'd like to give a visit. It would be well welcomed. Leave a like there if you choose to, and then you'll get every day's new Indie Impressions video delivered into your Facebook stream. Keeps it convenient, so you don't have to go looking for them and all that. I do the occasional news updates or contests there as well, so if you'd like, just leave that like over there. It just takes a second, but, you know, of course, that is entirely up to you. Lastly, if you're an indie dev and you'd like to get in contact with me about the possibility of covering your game on the show, quickest way to reach me is to either send me a tweet at @RockLeeSmile or send me an email via the contact form that's listed right on my website. Nice and easy to find. So that is going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Make sure you come back again tomorrow for another awesome indie game, and I hope you have a lovely night. Alright, talk to you later.